Sister Nuala, after the Supreme Court case, the Carter case, in February 2015, it was left to the Canadian government to come up with legislation for medically assisted dying in Canada, and that finally took place in June of 2016 under Justin Trudeau's Liberal government. The bill passed the House, it went to the Senate, there was a lot of debate. Eventually we ended up with a bill. What do we need to know about what transpired in June of 2016 regarding this legislation?
So the first thing is, you're correct, in February of 2015, the Supreme Court decriminalized physician-assisted death, which was the topic under consideration at the time, for a certain select criteria of individuals. They had to be competent, was voluntary. They, in fact, were having a grievous medical condition. They had endurable suffering. And the issue then was these people were eligible. The complex issue throughout, from the Supreme Court to Bill C-14, was whether or not this was about end of life, or broader than that.
Because the Supreme Court decision didn't say
the Supreme Court
anything.
Decision not only did not say it was about terminal illness and or end-of-life care, which is what most people thought was happening. It was the broadest, the most liberal, as I said, end-of-life legislation in the world. So it was extending to all kinds of grievous medical conditions with endurable suffering for persons that was not curable. Most things that you have, medicine can do some cures, but not most. So adult, a little bit defined, made it 18, still endurable, enduring suffering, determined by the patient, but on this contentious issue, the Bill C-14, and this was back and forth, very, very vicious kind of argument at times, the final bill added that there had to be reasonably foreseen death, which is, of course, now being challenged, because what the heck does that mean?
Right.
But what they were trying to do, the Liberals were trying to take into account the concern that this originally had intended to be in some way related to terminal illness or end-of-life care. So that was. The Bill C-14 did clarify some things. It did make an attempt to try to narrow it to this reasonably foreseen death, bringing it back to what I think most persons had thought they were supporting in all of this, no matter how wrong-minded I think that is. But that's being challenged. Then the other thing you need to know is at the level of vulnerable persons, and using that criteria of reasonably foreseen death, just in yesterday's newspaper, a story of the number of cases of persons who are contesting that constraint in Bill C-14 already.
Has that surprised you? How many people? Because when we saw the legislation go through, I mean, in the Catholic Christian kind of circles, we were like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening.
It's so broad.
And then you have other people who are saying, oh my gosh, I can't believe this is happening because it's so restrictive.
But what you're seeing there, my friend, is exactly the degree of polarization that we have about this issue. Yeah. So for some people, the Supreme Court decision was nirvana. We've got the best process in the world. Anybody, for any serious medical condition, whatever serious means, because we haven't defined that, can in fact request and receive this, and the doctors who receive the request really are obliged either to do it, or if not do it, get them to someone who can do it. This is like, for Christian Catholics, mind-boggling in the breath, slight narrowing after there's a discussion from different perspectives about vulnerability and conscience, and then we get this bill that is barely fulfilling some obligations of protection for the vulnerable. It's still not good enough. I know from those who are pro-Supreme Court decision as it stood that they anticipate again and again and again that they'll eat away at it, so there'll be no restrictions.
And I've even heard members of the current Liberal government saying this is a beginning. We had to start somewhere, so that is kind of explains some of the restrictions. Certainly, this is not going to go away, and we're going to be struggling with this for a long time to come. Sister Nuala, thanks very much.
You're very welcome.